Hi, welcome back to another episode of Anyone Can Paint. We're going to pick up where we left off last week. We're going to work on the highlighting of the roof on this bigger building, which is going to be the barn. We're also going to put in some highlights into the leaves. First thing we need to do, though, is put in some trunks and a few branches for those two trees around the outside edges. So we're going to get let's get our medium flat bristle brush. Make sure again that you get it wet, then towel dry it off. We're going to get into some blue and some brown. And you want to get a chiseled edge, and you recall how we do that is that once you've got your color blended, and this doesn't have to be overly blended, but you put your brush right in the paint, pull it through, turn it over, stick your brush back in the paint, pull it through again, and you can see you get a nice little sharp edge to work with, and that's what we're going to use. So we're going to come up to the canvas. And these can go wherever you want these to be. I mean, this is no big deal. You just want to bring those down and obviously stop at the top of the barn. And these can be, a little thicker. They can be a little thinner if you'd like. When we put the highlights, I'm just reloading the brush and getting the chiseled edge again. When we put the highlights on this, we're going to have some of the highlights going over some of these. So it kind of helps to push them down and back into the tree. But just wherever, here and there. You don't need a ton of these. And some of these will show and some won't. Let's go over to the other side. Now in this one, remember that this building here is going to kind of go up and go over that. So you don't have to really go down a whole lot further than that. I'm just reloading just to put maybe a branch in there. Just wherever. Doesn't matter. And we can clean out our brush after we've got that done. All right, the next brush we're going to is the small flat bristle brush, and now we're going to start working with the highlights in our roof. Now, as you're applying these, now these are going to be an array of different colors and things, and the roof is going to be a bit of a process. We're going to get all the shingles and things put in, then we're going to go back and we're going to distress it. We'll put some holes in the roof. We'll make some of these things look like they're cracked and broken off, and it's going to be a lot of fun. You'll see how easy it is, and there's not a lot of effort involved to do this. Again, you want to make sure that your brush is wet, then towel dry it off. Now you're going to use a variety of colors here. We're going to use basically all earth tones, but they can be some browns, some brighter browns, some grayish browns, and just a wide variety of these. Now what's important to note on this is that these shingles are going to follow your roof line. So your roof line is on an angle, just like that. So as you put these on, you want to follow that angle. And we're just going to put rows and rows and rows of these. You want to change the colors up a little bit now and then, so you're going to end up with a few different colors, piles of color. So you can get some white, and in that color we just used for our trunks, you can add some white to that, and that will get you a color. You can grab some more brown, put that off to the side. If you want to add a little blue to it, that's another color. You can grab some brown and blue, put a little bit more blue in it, kind of graze it up. That's another color. So you're just going to keep messing around with this and just adding some color. So I've got a combination of something, not quite sure what it is. It's a grayish color. I'm going to come up and right at the top just kind of make a stroke. Just kind of put these wherever. Now I'm going to change colors. I got some that's got a little bit more brown in it. And again, we're going to kind of go in rows here. I'm going to grab a little gray. I'm going to make that a little bit darker so you can see it better. There, a little bluish gray. You see how I'm putting those on angles? You got to follow that angle that you have there. And it's just really a thing of just going through and playing with these colors. There's one that's got a little bit more brown to it. And don't worry about your spacing. Don't worry about your rows, because that's all going to get taken care of here in a little bit. And again, some of these are going to get blackened out. This looks like maybe there's a hole in the roof. I mentioned last week where I kind of got the inspiration for this is driving around and seeing a lot of these types of buildings. And it's kind of interesting because you know that there's just a massive history that goes along with this. Now, if you get colors up here that you don't like, we can always go back, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to go back and change your mind. I'm just grabbing white to make a little bit lighter version of one here once in a while. And try not to make these perfect. I'm just altering colors. I'm just coming down and grabbing a little bit of blue. If you come down to the palette, look, you can see I've got just an array of different colors. You can see some brownish gray. You got some light color. You got some more brown that's in there. You got some blues and some blue gray. And I'm just, as I come down to reload, I'm just grabbing a little bit of this, and I come up, make a shingle or two, come up, grab a little bit of this. So on my brush, I've got a whole combination of yuck going on. That's that technical art word. And like I said, after you get going, because sometimes what can happen is you can start building a pattern where maybe you have light, dark, and it's really easy to do. So, but you'll notice that after you get these all in, and then you can always go back and paint over top of some of them. Sometimes too, if you put a light down and grab some dark, and you put the dark on top of the light when it's still wet, that changes to something a little bit different. So just kind of play with this. Just have a little bit of fun here, because it doesn't really matter a whole lot. It's going to get a whole lot uglier anyways. But I think you can kind of get the gist of this. And again, this is going to change. This is just, the starting point to doing this. Now, if you have any on there that you don't particularly like where they're too bright, like some of these browns, I had them just really burnt sienna. I don't really like that because it's kind of stands out a little bit. I've got this grayish color, so I just kind of go over top of it and just tone it down a little bit because I'm hitting it really light. And I don't mind the color change, but I just don't like it being as bright as it was. Sometimes these bluish gray ones maybe are a little bit too blue for you. Just kind of go through and just lightly go over them, and you'll see that it kind of still retains a little bit of the blue, but it tones it down a little bit. And that's really the nice thing about gray. And like there, I had a white that was, or a light color that was a little bit too bright. There, something like that. Now we're going to go across, since we're already in this frame of mind, we're going to go over and do the same thing to this roof there. Again, it's just going through and playing with different colors. Now these go pretty much straight down because remember that building is facing us. So these shingles can come basically just straight down. You don't have to worry about an angle like we did over there. And there's where my roof line goes, right about like that. And if you get 4 rows, I mean, don't worry about like it should only be 3 rows of shingles high. Don't worry about that. Put on as many as you think is necessary for that to look right. And if it takes 4 rows, that's fine. If it takes 5, there's nothing wrong with that. Mine just happens to have 3. And just keep changing your colors up, playing with this color. And just relax because it doesn't matter. Just want a good variety. And again, you want to paint over this way a little bit, knowing that the building is going to cut some of that off. But you want to make sure you get some shingles over there. Then again, just come up with some kind of a gray color, and there's a lot to choose from, I'm sure. And just kind of go over any of these that you don't really like too much or you want to tone down a little bit. You know, try not to make them so they're all one same color at all, obviously, but those are a little bit bright still. All right, let's go ahead and let those set. We're going to clean out the brush. Then we're going to go to the large flat bristle brush. And if you have that worn out version that I talked to you about last week, now's a great time to use that. But if you don't, just use a regular large flat bristle brush. What we're going to do next, we're going to put some highlights in our trees. Now, the thing that you want to watch for as you're doing this is that our sunlight is going to come in from the right-hand side. So as we're applying these, you want to make sure you have more highlighting on the sunlit side, on the right-hand side. As you start working your highlights back away from the light source, that starts to get into shadows. And you don't want to keep coming and making this real bright. You want to be brighter on the sunlit side and just lightly, gently wean your way over. And in fact, over here, you don't do a whole lot because that would be in the shadows. Same thing applies over here. This is going to be much brighter on this edge. And then we're going to work our way to the left, and we're going to do less and less and less. You want to make sure that you put some of these highlights over top of these trunks. Then it looks like there's leaves on this side of the tree. Because if you don't, it looks like a giant saw came by and just whacked everything off. Because you can see all the trunks and branches. So you need to put highlights over top of those to help push those back. Remember again, like everything, don't cover up all your dark. The dark ones that you leave dark will appear to be leaves that are back within the tree and helps really make that look like it's got some three-dimensional look to it. So with that flat bristle brush, the large one, you want to get some yellow and just tap your brush into it directly. And that will give you an even distribution of paint on the end of your bristles, because if you don't do that, sometimes when you load your brush, you end up with a thicker glob at one end and you don't on the other. And it'll open your bristles up a little bit. And that's really what you want to happen. So as you're coming over here, we're forming the highlights in clumps of leaves, and make sure you just keep your brush moving. And how I kind of describe this in my classes, because this is somewhat of a light touch, is I always tell them, when you go through here, when you highlight this, it's just, and it's kind of remind them to go light as opposed to and pounding it. So just kind of a light touch and keep your brush moving. And again, you want to make sure that you have some dark in and around. Now, the only bad thing about this short bristle flat brush is it doesn't hold near as much paint as the other one does. So I'm just reloading with yellow, loading the brush the same way, just tapping into that and coming back up and light taps. And you see here I'm going over top of the trunk and the branches, so it looks like it pushes that back, and there's leaves on our side. I'm going to reload and I'll be right back up, just grabbing some more color. Okay, this is where I'm going to start paying attention and not getting a whole lot brighter as I start working my way back into the shadows. So I'm doing a little bit less and less. Until it just kind of fades away. But you can see they're much stronger and there's more of them. Then it starts to go away. And I kind of left that pretty much untouched. We're going to jump across, do the same thing to the other side. Load your brush the same way, same technique, everything's the same. The right hand edge of this is where we're going to hit this a little bit with more color. But you want to keep your brush moving. It's really important that that dark shows through. Then again, you want to make sure that you apply some over top of your trunks and branches. I'm going to reload. I'll be right back. And then I'm starting to do less pressure and less of it. Kind of just a little bit of suggestion back here. There. All right, don't clean out your brush. We're going to put a little bit of highlighting in here, but remember this is in the shadows, so we don't want to get super duper bright. So with that yellow in your brush, you want to grab some blue, and you want to incorporate that in there. Remember, this is that stroke that we did when we bend the bristles to kind of create the weeds. If you bend it just like that, you'll get the nice little tops of weeds like that. And this is going to be done right in this section here that's really kind of between the two buildings. Again, don't get real bright, but it needs to be light enough, not that light, light enough that you can see it up against this. And don't cover up all your dark. It's important that some of that shows through. Just like I put some highlight here, but not there. It looks like that's behind it. It's just a really simple way of getting a little bit of distance in your painting, a little depth, without really having to try too hard. Now, I kind of left this open because I remember that path that we talked about before. We're going to put that in next. So just like that, just enough where you can kind of see it, but it's not bright like this, and it's certainly not as bright as your highlights. You can clean out your brush when you've got that in. All right, then we're going to go to our small flat bristle brush, and we're going to underpaint the path that goes through there. Now remember, when we do paths, is that the front of the path, or the lower part of it, needs to be wider. As you go up the canvas or back into the painting, it needs to get narrower. That's what helps make that look like it goes back. It's all about tricking the eye to think that there's distance in there. So this is some brown, a little bit of blue. And you're going to go up, and again, this part of it, hopefully you can see this, is wider here. And then as it goes back, and again, make sure that you're making horizontal strokes so it looks like it's laying flat. If you put this in like this, and it's not going to look that way. So just kind of get in and just rub your brush back and forth. And your path needs to get wider as it comes out of those grasses. And it just kind of goes off to wherever. Then you can clean out your brush. Now with that brown and blue that we just did, you want to grab a little bit of white, same brush, and incorporate this to make this a little bit lighter. Just a little bit. And we're going to put a little bit of highlighting on this. Again, make sure you're doing horizontal strokes. Just like that. So you can see it, but it's not really standing out. All right, with that same brush, we're going to put in a little bit of a dead tree that kind of hangs up over here, and that'll kind of help push that background back a little bit further. This is blue and brown again, and you want to make sure you get your brush to a chiseled edge. Now what I like to do sometimes doing these trees, and I think it's a little bit easier, that when you've got your brush to a chiseled edge, you've got a really nice little fine edge to work with, obviously. I kind of like to start up at the top and then pull it down, because what happens is naturally as your brush is starting to run out of paint, the tendency is to push harder into the canvas to get more paint out of the brush. Well, when you have less paint, what happens is your bristles start to widen out and your tree automatically starts getting wider, which it should anyways. So we're going to start at the top, and this comes down, kind of goes off behind this building. And I'm going to reload and I'll be right back up. Same color, again, chiseled edge. I'm going to reload again. And every time you want to go up and add to this, you need to always reload. So you can get that nice little edge. You can take that up higher. Now you can make little branches if you want to go off of this. Again, I'm just kind of reloading. And you want to make sure that the trunk is wider than the rest of your tree. And you got to look at your trunk and see, is that wide enough that would really support that? This needs to be a little bit thicker in here. There we go. And we're going to get a little bit of white. Don't clean out your brush. A little bit of white with that, because that tree's still in the shadows, but we need to put a little bit of lightness on the right hand side, because remember our light source is coming from there, so it would catch a little bit maybe of reflected light, a little residual light, but it's not real bright. And with that paint still being wet, it'll kind of prohibit that from getting too bright on you. Just add a little bit to it. Stay on the right hand side of the trunks and your branches, and then you don't have to do every little bit, but you want to kind of on your bigger branches, most of the trunk. That's all you got to do. Just kind of bring it out a little bit. And it's just a dead tree that's there. And then we can clean out the brush. Now, if you want to, we've got just a couple minutes left. I'm going to go through and hit my yellow again and brighten this side up. This just isn't as bright as I'd like this to be. So oftentimes, if you come back and hit it again, you know how yellow will kind of fade on you and allow some of the underpainting to show through? Sometimes you need to do what we call layering and put another coat of it on. Now I'm just going to put it mostly on the sunlit side and work this back a little bit. I just want it to be a little bit brighter so you could really tell which way the light was coming from. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side again, just kind of focusing on that right-hand edge just to brighten it up a bit more. And this is probably where we're going to finish this week. Next week when we meet again, we're going to go through and distress our barns, the roofs, and make them look like they've been there for a long time and everyone forgot about them. And then we'll start working the highlights on the front of the barn, and on the side we'll work on the inside of that storage shed, and we'll start blocking in our buildings. This part I haven't mentioned, there's going to be a lot of weeds and things. Of course, a path going in, we'll get that all blocked in next week also. So we'll, it kind of looks like a gingerbread house right now with that roof, but it won't next week. We're going to make that rascal broken up and holy and missing shingles and everything else. So it'll be a lot of fun, and you just kind of relax when you do this and don't try too hard. It works out really, really good. Make sure you clean your brushes out real good when you're done painting. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you come back next week so we can start terrorizing these buildings.